I'm U.S. Chiller, General Secretary, Association of Fire Engineers. Welcome you all. Now today, the webinar we will take up regarding the compartmentation. As you know, the compartmentation is an important aspect in the building to restrict the fire and smoke to travel from one place to another place. The subject will be taken by Dr. Paul, Mr. Purandre, and third, the Director, AP Fire Services. I'll request Mr. R.C. Sharma to give small introduction of the subject and the speakers. Mr. R.C. Sharma, please take over.
Okay, thank you, Chiru Saab. Good morning, everybody. I think today we have got a really important subject. So far as fire service is concerned, their operational capability, we are talking about life safety, we are talking about saving the property. I think everything, the basis for doing that is the compartmentation, and the subject today is containment and compartmentation for life and fire safety. So it is just as it is indicated in the subject itself, that life safety, if we want to do that, compartmentation becomes necessary because the smoke is to be contained and fire is to be contained. And along with that, that is one part. And second part is the smoke management. You cannot confine the things, and that's okay, but you have to just manage to vent out the smoke and heat so that we are able to have a smoke-free environment. And fire, because heat, if it is ventilated, yes, it is very useful, so that we also can, as a fireman, when we receive the call and try to go to that affected floor, we can find the access to that area its visibility is there, and it is smoke free. We can breathe ourselves and we can locate the seat of fire and control that. So with this introduction and that compartmentation, how it can be done, what are the various other factors, we have got eminent speakers with us, Dr. Paul, we have got Mr. Abhay Purandre, and Director of Fire Services, this is from Andhra. So we are having these people who are going to be dealing with the subject in details. But only thing which I wanted to just say here is that if we see in totality the life safety and firefighting, the subject which we are dealing today, and along with the smoke management, they are the main pillar or basis for the life safety and fire safety or saving the property. If we are able to manage this effective compartmentation, and then we can have the probably that the smoke management, I think we will not have any problem. The people living in different types of building, they will not have much problem. They can escape easily, and firefighters, those who are available there, or the fire brigade, when we reach there after some time, will not have that much difficulty to control the things. So with this small brief introduction, I'll now hand over to Dr. Paul, who is and Mr. Purandre subsequently. They will take care of the subject and discuss with you in details. Please, Dr. Paul.
Thank you, R.C. sir. Thank you very much for the nice introduction of the topic that we have today. And we have with us Mr. Purandre also, and we will try to discuss the nuances of this important topic, as R.C. sir has said. And is my screen visible, R.C. sir?
Oh, yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
I'll take your leave because I have to go for some other program. So please go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Right, sir. Right, sir.
Thank you, R.C.
Okay. Very good morning to all the participants. As R.C. sir has given a mention at the beginning now, this is a very important area, and generally fire people are very happy if they are satisfied that with in the building the compartmentation containment is very well planned. They know that the damage will be very restricted, and at least the life of the people will be saved. So life safety is directly, direct determinant of the containment and compartmentation. The presentation what I'm going to discuss here today with you is also, kind of embellished with some practical example, because people, always desire that there is some kind of a practical case also discussed. So for that, I picked up a few slides from my friend and colleague Nitin Gupta. He's from Markov, and I think he's joined already. And we worked on a project. He was working on a project, and we were trying to kind of clean up some things. related to containment compartmentation, and they came out with a very nice area. So I thought it's a good opportunity to share with you all that we were trying to do. So when we begin with this thing that they actually containment and compartmentation, or rather containment is actually part of or entwined with the egress strategy, wherein it influences the psychological and physiological. It considers, it is decided on the basis of what kind of people, what kind of movement, or what kind of population are we talking about. And we also before looking at the containment, look at how the people will move, what kind of capacity do we have to move out of the place, and what kind of hazardous contents that we have in terms of materials, finishes, what kind of smoke or other problems that can happen, as Asisa was saying. Then it also, then as a result, it influences the fire protection and smoke management system. So if you are good on containment and compartmentation, the difficulty in smoke management system and fire protection systems that will exist later on, it will be much lesser of an implication. And then it looks at also the building design and the construction endurance, the impact on the construction in terms of the final loss to the structure for rehabilitation and rebuilding. That also is hugely related to the right kind of a containment and a compartment. So it's a very important area of the building design, fire safety, inherent property, and of course it becomes an integral part of the egress design itself. Let me just give you some idea about how strongly it can impact. The ones where we find that the containment compartmentations are very well articulated, very well executed, implemented, and followed, they have both the strategies very clearly defined, whether they want to have a staged egress or all-out egress. And different countries, they follow different norms. But essentially, the underlying principle that they follow is how robust containment and compartmentation they are able to achieve within the building. So if you are able to do well, then you have both these options, whether you want to have a staged egress or all-out egress. So the impact of this kind of strategy is far beyond what we would normally think of. So that is just to amplify that in complex buildings this can be a problem. I would like to start with the issue of fire containment, which is basically the subject under which the compartmentation is a subset. Now, basically, what we have is a passive fire protection as one of the two approaches of fire safety. One is active and the other passive. The passive measures, they require, as we all understand, they require no actuation, and they have a protection which is all being present, and it's a proactive. Now, it provides you sufficient time for the building occupant to exit out of the building, whereas in case of active systems, they need to be robust, and they have issues related to operational and functional reliability, whether or not they will work, whether or not they will perform the way we want, whether or not there is some kind of another variable that will fail. So passive systems will always have that kind of a risk dependency, whereas the active systems will have the risk dependency. And to ensure their robustness, there will always be two issues of operational and functional reliability. And whereas in case of passive fire protection, we have a kind of a permanent solution all the time, unless of course the occupancy changes. Now here it is important to highlight here that active systems are actually subordinate to the passive measures, and it is only to the residual risk that the active systems will perform. So first the passive systems or passive measures must do the needful, and then whatever is the residual, that's actually the philosophy behind this. And unfortunately, the prescriptive courts have a paradox where efficacy of passive measures is this notional or conjectural, and active systems continue to be provided in an independent manner. Now, in the category of passive fire protection measures, there are three options. One is by control of rate of fire growth, by fire load material characteristics, the safe materials, non-smoke producing or fire resistant material. That's one area where we can, by passive means we can do. The other one is look at the emergency egress, etc., wherein people move out safely. The third part of the passive fire protection is what today we are discussing. So it's actually not one, it is actually part of a large family of measures that we look at, wherein the objective is to confine the fire, etc. And within a containment process of interior fire, the compartmentation is one of the areas. Now, I want you to just have a kind of a look at the big picture in containment versus compartmentation. It's not a new concept. Earlier, the towns were way back 300-400 years, as you would understand. The towns were divided into neighborhoods so that the fires don't spread, and the neighborhoods were divided into the building blocks so that mill type of buildings, they started coming up way back. And then from there, the concept of fire containment or the compartmentation within the buildings started coming in the last century. And after that, there has been a considerable improvement. Now here it offers protection against passage of flames, hazardous gases, etc. And through and protection is provided by walls, floor ceiling assemblies, etc. Now, if you look at the various containment strategies or the principles or the options that we find here, this enlisting that I am showing here, fire protection structure, doors, shutters, and the compartment wall and floors is just one of them. There are a whole lot of other areas which also are part of the containment family of passive fire measures, which are together giving us that reliability in the basic design. And some of you would be aware that there is a new concept NBC also talks about, but in hospitals and ICU areas, we very strongly talk about defend in place. That actually is a containment strategy, not a compartmentation measure per se, wherein the objective is continuity of process as a fundamental premise. So in containment versus compartmentation, what essentially we are looking at is, it is defined as not only compartment, but also as cavity barriers, wherein, for example, if you are protecting a staircase well, or the lift lobbies, or the exit passageways, etc. So they are also part of the containment strategy. It's not a compartment stopping in one zone, but protecting and isolating an area. That also is a part of the philosophy for both of them is slightly different. Containment objectives are very simple, and we can very easily relate to these. So it has to restrict the fire irrespective of where it is, how it is detected, and the containment has to happen fail safe, that it should not go from one area to another. So which means that it cannot act on itself. So the cavities or the openings, etc., if they are required to be shut, then they have to be ensured like as fail-safe options. And the objective is to provide safety to life and property. Now, in this case, normally we would not talk about the property safety, but in this case, it also refers to containing the impact and limit the fire and consequent hazard to the people, internal hazard, and exposure hazards that the adjoining buildings, etc., should not happen. So this is where I think in fire safety, this is one area which is so all-encompassing, which affects to so many areas of fire safety. I think there is no other one philosophy which gives you such a wide variety of objectives to be fulfilled, and that's actually the significance of containment and the reliability that fire department would have. In a very simplified, I don't know why this red color has come anyway. Containment functions in a very simplified. It controls the smoke, as RC Saab was saying in the beginning, and it has a small fires, and the smoke can be confined and not allowed to escalate into full-scale blaze, can cause a serious problem in the long term. Now, in fire load, this containment also has actually the mother of containment is the fire load issue. Now, how you arrive at the containment, it's not just the square meters of an area and then you provide a wall or something. That's a simpler way of looking at. But what we are looking at is the fire load decides how big the fire or conflagration would happen, and therefore what should be contained. Now here the severity of heat content is to be seen, and therefore we have to look at the fire density and the fire load. So how much of the fire load in terms of calorific value is to be confined in one place, and what is that potential? So unless that is related to containment compartmentation, it makes sense. If you look at the loads in the buildings that typically one would consider, it looks at dead load, imposed load, wind load, and any other and the temperature loads. The temperature loads are the fire loads, whether or not the structure will perform. Now, in the last part, I think is very interesting to see that there was a study in IIT Gandhinagar in 2018, which says that as compared to 20 years back, the fire load in typical buildings in India has increased 3 times. So what is now a call for us that if it is increased 3 times and we are holding on to issue of compartmentation as a one fixed entity that over the years that will remain same, and we are not looking at the fire load. I think we are looking at food's paradise. If the load increases, then the specification, the area, etc., for the compartmentation or the containment will also have to be seen. So it is very, very big eye-opener study that it calls for really looking at the entire compartmentation containment strategies that we follow. So this is an important issue. Now, way back in 1960, we also had this IS 1641, where this issue of in different building types, what should be the maximum permissible load and how it should be distributed was there. Then I think over a period of time, the society improved, and we forgot about this particular issue. And even in a National Building Code of 2005, there is a small table somewhere shoved in the corner, table 26. It gave the fire load density, how much density should be there, which gave you an opportunity to see whether the fire load is distributed, so that whether your compartment containment can work. Unfortunately, the table 3.1, as I'm showing, got removed from our codes and standard much before, and this table 26 got it removed subsequently. But to my mind, these two things removing, they have a bearing on the principle of containment and fire safety. Then again, if you look at National Building Code Part 6, where we are looking at the structure, their imposed fire loads and load characteristics, they define the endurance of the structure. And if we are looking at the fire endurance, unless we have looked at what kind of a fire load we are talking about, I think we are not doing justice to the safety of the structure and the safety of the occupants, because we are not looking at how much heat is coming. We are actually closing our eyes, we are putting something, but we don't know how big our problem is. So that is where there is a gray area, and I think our audience, they can actually evaluate that and move forward on their own, in notwithstanding whether or not it is there in the NBC or not, but the principle remains the same. Now the same principle gets translated into structural fire and a type of construction, and I think the National Building Code has a very, very elaborate way of explaining all this, and this is not away from the subject that we are discussing, and many times people just look at it and overlook what is required to be done. And these tables actually have their purpose in our methodology of containment, structural fire induction, type of construction, codal, they're all bunched together. So the mother of, I think, fire safety starts actually evolving from a description like this. Now, as far as our other areas of containment, for example, external perimeter protection, that also is part of containment strategy. I found a very interesting set of envelope design, where somebody is looking at whether how the flames to leap back into this the building can be protected by different options. Now, these are all containment approaches. Coming to the compartmentation side, the objective is again the subset of that, wherein we are looking at the prevention of fire within the building. We are looking at fire resistance. Performance integrity means it should not lose its position, go out of its place with the pressure of the expanded gases, and insulation of the heat, prevent smoke, and the opening of services, they need to be protected. So that's actually the purpose of compartmentation. Now here I would like to share with you, in a very simple way. This is actually my friend Nitin. They were dealing with this one of the hospital wards, wherein actually there are two units of patients on either side of a central core area of nursing station and other areas that we typically have. So one zone is on the other side, the other upper side, one zone, this black line is actually 102-hour fire rating division in a floor plate, and it perfectly settles the issue. And if there is a fire, the people can move elsewhere. So then we can horizontally move from one part or one unit of patients into the adjoining units. Now this more or less complies with all the fire problem, but the difficulty is something very different here. The difficulty is that in order to remove these 31 nursing unit people, I need a large number of people. And here in the middle, I have all kinds of mixed occupancy, mixed kind of spaces where just a second.
Now,
where there are large combustible materials, there are inflammable materials, there are pantries, but they are not segregated. I comply with these requirements, but unfortunately I can't protect them. So therefore, what we found was that with a large number of entire units shifting to another side, there is no place there. So this is the kind of a situation that we still cannot avoid. And these patients, if you have to stay there for a longer time, we cannot have. So we discussed with the people like Nitin, and we told them that this kind of a problem will continue to exist. So they came up with a more detailed interpretation of the document, and therefore the complete design was in another situation was modified, where if we see the same unit is divided in two parts. We have a 20-30 minutes partition for each of these ward areas. So if you have to move, you just move 4 people away, you have a protection of 20 minutes. Then from one area, you can divide this whole thing into 60 minutes area, joining within the 30 minute, within the same ward unit. So inside where you have the different combustible materials and different storage, that is protected differently. So here, I don't need that much of a manpower to actually really shift everybody out. So this is a much more refined, and wonderfully what has been done is creating an external perimeter of some kind of a refuge or area where these people can actually be taken out without really bothering much where to go. Now this the variation, the best part is that when we change from one kind of a design situation to another situation, area per patient, the cost per patient of this building, that remains the same. Which means to say that if you implement all this, the costs will go up, the area will start increasing. It doesn't happen. We have an example. And if there are any issues, there are questions on this kind of an approach, Nitin is there with us today. We can ask Nitin to clarify on these things.
Okay. Right, Dr. Paul.
There are other examples. Sir, just
I have to disturb you. I'm enjoying your speech, but then the time is.
Yeah. My time is up, sir. The containment is a passive strategy.
Yeah.
Compartmentation is subset of that. Within the code compliance, there can be many solutions, and they can all be equally efficient in terms of cost, etc. And the selection of a suitable compartmentation solution with other consideration, that can form the containment strategy. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions, we will take. And Nitin is also there with respect to that building. We can explain.
If you wanted to ask Mr. Nitin, he can also.
We can take him in the question answers later on.
Okay.
No, we can take the Purandre, and people have questions. Then later we'll ask.
Yeah, we'll take the question in the last. Now yeah. I request Mr. Purandre to take over, please. Mr. Purandre.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, is my screen visible now?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So, thank you, Professor Paul. That was really a lot of information in a very short time. Thank you so much. And I think you covered most of it. In fact, I'll be able to skip some of my slides because of that. So this is basically what I will cover here. And I try to restrict myself to concepts. So I believe that if the concepts are clear, then the code requirements themselves become much more clear and more acceptable to readers. So as this already Professor Paul has covered, so I will not spend much time on this slide. And when we talk of passive measures, actually we are doing two things. This also Professor Paul had covered, but I'd like to cover this in more detail. So one is we are trying to restrict the rate of fire growth, and this we do by controlling the ignition, flame spread, and heat release properties of materials, interior finishes, and external cladding and roofing. And the second is containment. Containment is we try to restrict the fire to the compartment of origin or nearby areas, at least for a specified period of time. Now, as Professor Paul said, containment is a strategy, and it need not be restricted to a building. It can be restricted to a city. In fact, it can be restricted to a large area also. So nowadays, when we talk of forest fires, then they talk of containment of the forest fire. So containment is where we are trying to restrict the fire to an area and to try and bring it under control, right? And when we are talking of containment of internal fires, it's actually compartmentation, as Professor Paul said, it's a subset of containment actually. And when we do containment of external fire spread, that we use fire separation, right? So fire separation is the distances that we need to maintain between buildings to ensure that radiation is not a factor for fire spreading, which used to be the case earlier. So we had a lot of cases of major conflagrations affecting cities, and this used to be the problem. Today, when we talk of ignitability of materials, we have a lot of data today, right? We have equipment which we can use to characterize the combustion properties of materials. So its ignition temperature, what's thermal conductivity, material specific heat, material density. And today we have a large amount of data that's available. So we can use this to ensure that fires don't grow quickly. to the extent possible, where it's possible in design. And when we come to actually controlling the heat energy transfer, once there is a fire and we have a transfer, that's what causes the fire to increase. So we use two tactics. We try to control the fuel properties, as we just said. We control the fuel properties, or we try to control the environment. And we try to control the source fuel interactions, in which controlling the heat energy transfer process. So in case there is a fire in a compartment, I need to ensure that that energy is not transferred to other combustibles which are in close contact of that. And that's where compartmentation comes in. So what I'm doing is I'm controlling the conduction, convection, and radiation of the heat from a fire. So talking of smoke spread within a building fire, we know that within compartments, fire and smoke can travel from the compartment of origin to adjacent rooms through openings such as doors, concealed spaces, HVAC systems, or by penetrating partitions or walls. And between floors, we know that always there are services which are connecting different floors. And that's what becomes the passage for fire and smoke. So service ducts, elevator shafts, stairways, these allow the convected heat and smoke to travel upwards. And if the fire-rated separation of these stairs or shafts fail due to any reason, then they become chimneys. They allow the heat to travel up very fast, especially more the height, more is the stack effect, and this allows the heat and the smoke to travel fast. And of late, what we are finding out is that the external surface is becoming a big problem. It's allowing fire to spread directly to upper floors. So you may have a good internal passive fire protection, but if your external surface is combustible, then it allows the fire to spread upwards as well. And these are two short case studies. I just want to show you how containment fails. This is a building in the US, Philadelphia, and known as the One Meridian Plaza. There was a fire there, and this is after the fire. And this building had compartmentation, everything. The stairs were supposed to be, the stair doors were supposed to be fire rated. But the reason why it failed was that the fire grew so fast, the amount of combustibles were so high that the actual fire size was much more than what would have been expected in this kind of a building. Okay, the fire occurred in a 22nd floor in a linseed oil soaked rack, so some furniture work was going on. And as you know, linseed oil self-combusts, so there's the phenomena of self-ignition which takes place in case of linseed oil, and that happened. By the time the fire department arrived, fire was well developed and had dropped down to the 21st floor also. Heavy smoke had already entered storeways and floors immediately above the 22nd. Fire continued for 19 hours and involved 8th floor at its peak. A fire attack was hampered by complete failure of the building's electrical system and inadequate water pressure. So there was a problem related to firefighting, but the fact is that the fire size on that floors were so high that though the fire compartmentation was provided, fire-rated exit doors were provided, but they could not sustain that attack from the fire. So fire-resistant rated construction features, particularly floor ceiling assembly, shaft enclosures failed. Ventilation openings in stairway enclosures permitted smoke to migrate into the stairways. Unprotected penetrations in fire resistance rated assemblies and absence of fire dampers permitted fire and smoke to spread vertically and horizontally. As Professor Paul rightly said, it's not just about providing a fire rated wall. There are so many aspects, in fact, much more than the walls that are important, and it's the weakest link here which matters. So that's from where the fire will spread. This is another incident which I'd like to share. This is different because the fire spread not from the inside, but from the outside. And this is the first Interstate Bank. What happened was the fire started around the 12th floor, and then it flashed over. Again, the floor plate was about 2,200 square meters, which was a big floor plate. There was no compartmentation. And because the fire size was big, it flashed over, flames came outside, and then it spread upwards. About 6 floors were affected in this fire. So fire originated in open plan office. So open plan meaning there was no separation of the space. There was no compartmentation within the floor. And fire extended to the entire open area. Several office enclosures fully involved the 10th floor except for the passenger elevator lobby. And once the fire flashed over, flames were extending up and licking the exterior of the building. So the fire then extended to floors above, primarily via the outer walls of the building. External exposure from flames allowed the fire to externally spread upward from the 12th to 16th floors. Windows broke and flames penetrated around the ends of the floor slabs. Curtain walls, including windows and spandrel panels, were almost completely destroyed. There were no eyebrows to stop the exterior vertical spread. The slide which Professor Paul showed, where the facade was sloping actually, which prevented this flames from reaching the upper floors is one way of avoiding this, because we know that when the flame comes out, they have a tendency to try and go close to the building. It's known as the Quanda effect. And because of that, the upper floors start getting affected quickly. Fire extended at rate estimated at 45 minutes per floor and burned intensely approximately 90 minutes on each level. This resulted in 2 floors being heavily involved at any point during the fire. Now, these are fires which happened with supposedly very efficient fire services in developed countries, but even they could not do anything, because once the fire grows beyond a certain size, once it involves multiple floors, then there is really nothing that firefighters can do. It's very difficult to achieve control over such fires. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to segregate a large fire compartment into smaller and more manageable compartments using fire compartmentation, right? So this to keep the fire limited to a smaller area so that its effects are limited. It can be controlled quickly by firefighters. Fire limited to a compartment will have a lower heat release rate as compared to fire involving multiple compartments, and hence this will generate less smoke. This improves the survivability of occupants and reduces damage to property and structure. See, the amount of effluents, fire effluents, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, which are being generated, they are dependent on the mass loss rate. That means how much mass is being combusted. And the mass loss rate again is dependent on the heat release rate of the fire. What is the size of the fire? So more the size of the fire, more is the material that is burning, more is the gas that is being generated. So obviously, if I can restrict my fire size, I am generating less effluents, and less effluents are likely to travel to other compartments or to other parts of the building. So when we are talking of creating a compartment, obviously we need that compartment to have some fire resistance. And the important concept here is that the fire resistance should be greater than the fire severity, right? And the 2 case studies that I showed you because in those 2 cases, the fire severity was actually higher than the fire resistance provided. And that was the reason why the compartmentation failed. So fire resistance, as you most of you are aware, is a measure of the ability of the structure to resist failure. Whereas fire severity is a measure of the destructive impact of the fire or of the forces or temperatures which could cause collapse or other failure. So I won't go into this. I'll try to move to the next slide. Right. So this is how NBC defines fire resistance. So it is in terms of the load bearing capacity, integrity, and the insulation. And these are the aspects depending on what is the kind of structural or non-structural element that is being tested. These are the different aspects which will be tested. Right, and we have how do we measure fire resistance? So we measure them using different test protocols, right? And this is measured in terms of time. So how do I measure it? I measure it using a furnace. I expose that element to a specified temperature for a given period of time, and if it passes the test, then it is given a rating. And what is the temperature to which I expose that element? So you will see here, this is a standard normal fire curve, what happens in a compartment. Whereas what you see red is actually the test fire curve. So this, you will notice that natural fires decay after a certain time, whereas the test fire curve actually goes on. So it's considered to be a more severe representation of a fire. And how do we do this? We use a standard fire curve. Currently, we are using this ISO 834. Even within, we had an ISI standard, but now we use the ISO 834 curve. So this is the how the temperature rises in that furnace. And we have other curves as well. So different countries may follow different curves, or if you're in the industry and there are like flammable liquids, then you may use the hydrocarbon curve. And how do we measure the fire severity? So there are some formulae which have been proposed by fire scientists, where we consider what is the fuel load, what is the ventilation factor, and what are the lining materials that are used. And based on that, you can actually calculate the fire severity in terms of time. So for a given compartment, I may get a value of 130, and if I provided a fire resistance of 120, then it might fail, right? And I would quickly also like to share 2 concepts related to fire barrier and related to the smoke barrier. So these are 2 different concepts, and I will take the use of IBC here. IBC is the International Building Code, which states that a fire barrier is a fire resistance rated wall assembly of materials designed to restrict the spread of fire in which continuity is maintained. So it can have different fire ratings, as you see here, and obviously there are going to be openings in that. So there will be doors, there will be AC ducts going through that, and for that there is some requirement given there, right? And this is a definition given in NFPA 101, a similar definition to the IBC. Whereas if you see a smoke barrier is a continuous membrane, either vertical or horizontal, such as a wall, floor, or ceiling assembly, that is designed or constructed to restrict the movement of smoke. So here you see the difference between the smoke barrier and the fire barrier is that in the second case, it is specifically to restrict the movement of smoke. So it is related more to fire safety and to smoke control systems, right? Though it does have a fire rating, even smoke barriers have a fire rating. Typically 1 hour is what will be required. Also, there will be openings. So there will be doors, there will be HVAC ducts, which will go through a smoke barrier. And those will have to be smoke protected. So that fire door also will have to pass test for passage of smoke. And this is a simple example. So you will see here that these are for the opening protectives related to the doors and related to other openings. And for fire barriers, you will see that if I have a 4-hour fire barrier, I will need a 3-year door or fire assembly rating. Note that this is different in NBC. So I'm just showing it for reference. This should not be construed to be what is required in NBC, right? And if you look at smoke barriers here, you will see that for a smoke compartment which I'm creating, a 1 hour, 1/3 20-minute door is accepted there. That's not accepted in NBC currently. And I just want to share a simple example here, like what Professor Paul had. So this is again a hospital project, and again, as you know, we divide buildings into fire compartments to restrict the spread of fire. And this was designed as per an FPA 101, and I think the compartment size was 2,200 meters for a sprinkler building. So you will see here, this line here is showing the compartment boundary actually. Now, being a hospital building, the requirement is of horizontal or staged evacuation. So what will happen is, in case of a fire in this compartment, as Professor Paul said, we move the patients to the next compartment. We have to ensure that there is sufficient space in the adjacent compartment to for the patients in this compartment. So that's an important consideration. At the same time, this the doors here, the HVAC ducts which will pass through these walls, they all need to be smoke rated. So I will not only will it have to be a fire compartment, but it will also have to pass test for being a smoke compartment also. So doors especially, or dampers, the dampers provided here will be fire cum smoke dampers, combined fire and smoke dampers, not just fire dampers, because they need to protect against smoke also. So this is the kind of compartmentation that will be done. And an important aspect which Professor Paul highlighted using that slide, and which I, seeing this slide now, I'm reminded, is whether it is possible actually to move all the patients to the next compartment, and whether the next compartment should be subdivided into smoke compartments. That is something that needs to be looked at, right? So with this, I'll end my talk here.
Okay, again, the talk is very nice.
Yeah.
And everybody was enjoying, but again, the time is, I request Mr. Purandare to sum
Yeah,
up.
stop sharing. Yeah.
मजा तो बहुत आ रहा था, लेकिन क्या करें, समय ऐसा है.
जी sir. Yeah.
Okay. Can we, can I request Nitin to say a few things on how we had a problem in that particular hospital, and as an architect, how we was able to achieve the same thing. And Nitin, if you are listening, can you share your experience for about maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes?
Sure, sir. Good morning to everyone. Referring back to the...
You can open your video, Nitin.
Yeah, it is open, sir. Can you?
Yeah, open. Yeah, you can see you.
Yeah, yeah, please.
So referring to the concept design that we did, which some of the images that Professor Paul shared, I think something very radical came out to me also as an architect, who is generally involved in all the various types of buildings. Obviously, hospital is the most severe out of them with respect to the fire hazard. Was that somehow, I think, as architects, in our zeal to do these so-called contemporary facade designs, we are forgetting a very basic element, which was the balcony or the veranda. And from Abhay's presentation also, which was a very nice and informative presentation, I would say, for me, that idea got only reinforced, looking at the certain case studies that Abhay presented, where the fire leapfrogged onto the upper levels. It only reinforces the thought process that we developed at that time, that why not go back to verandas? outside the building facade rather than looking at these tall, continuous curtain wall facades, where we've forgotten the balconies and verandas altogether. So what the veranda does is that it offers the opportunity to the firemen to approach each and every corner of the building from the outside. If we are able to connect this veranda continuously, veranda becomes a refuge area. It allows the firemen to reach each and every window from the veranda. And if this veranda is connected to the exit staircases, like a typical fire refuge area is, it becomes a huge blessing, I would say, for in case of a fire hazard. And even otherwise, as an architectural element, it brings back the beauty of a natural outdoor semi-open space to me, that the patients can, if required, go and sit outside. The facade should have these openable sliding doors or openable doors through which the patient can move out. Even if you see it now in context of the highly infectious diseases of the COVID environment, where one is looking at scenarios where the inside is not airtight absolutely. So all of this put together, it really brings in a new paradigm as far as for me as architect and for my colleagues, that, the veranda or balcony outside the ward areas, where the patient partly is self-preservative, they can partly walk outside or be assisted. And this comes from the fact that all said and done, even with 2.4 meter wide corridors, space is not enough. I think that is a fact that we analyzed with Paul Saab. Space is absolutely not enough to transport the patients from one compartment to another. The corridors will get jammed. In that situation of panic, it will be really God dependent if, we can transfer all of those 30 odd patients from one side to another. So that is what my, I would say, take is from the talk today, that the whole idea of providing a veranda outside on the facade is probably reinforced in my own mind. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nitin. I think Mr. Naik is there. Mr. Naik, can we request you to, you had some busy engagement in the morning, it seems. Chira sir, we can have Naik sir again. Yeah.
Oh, yes, Mr. Naik, we will request you to please take over.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
And really sorry that we kept you waiting. It was another a good friend and guest, Mr. Nitin Gupta, who
Yes,
came.
sir. Yes, sir. Just I will quickly review about things which are in the containment and then compartmentation to achieving the safety, life safety, and then life safety and fire safety achievement. Whenever the building designs are there, the compartmentation plays a vital role in spreading of fire or the smoke or any toxic gases. And the design should ensure that avoidance of the spread of smoke adjacent to the spaces through the various leakages, because there are so many services including in this building, and then service ducts or openings or whatever may be there in the compartment enclosure, and then whatever the pipes or openings all around there, which are the service ducts which are flowing from the top to the bottom. And then coming to the point of the absence of concealed sealing or proper sealing, all the openings will give this flue effect in the smoke and then toxic gases spread over to the staircases and then corridors, and wherever the movements they will have, their occupants can have a free movement of this evacuation or something. And then this fire compartmentation as a space, which is the building that have enclosed by this fire barrier or otherwise is the resistant wall on all sides and top bottom, it will give that. And then coming to the staircase point of view, it will come into the pressurization. Pressurization somewhat extending about pressurization of the staircases, it gives somewhat the smoke may not enter and penetrate into the fire doors or the structural elements. And then coming to the point of the fire resistant rating of its fire doors and then fire separation valves and other facade building or something continuously, these are some of the passive system of the building components, and then they will give an important play role in the smoke cannot be entered into this all through these channels of the staircases or the corridors and then rooms and whatever may be the available compartmentation. Another point of view, this thing, the compartmentation as given in NBC, as Paul sir already said some of the things about this narration, and then basement issue is very, very important. And then now the basement compartmentation not going by any solid part of things, it is going by only sprinkler, the sprinkler system of automatic sprinkler system. This is giving all these driveways of the driveways of the basement goes by the interspacing of the sprinkler is very, very congestive and then making to the fire curtain, this water curtain through water curtain, this is achieving. And then in case of the hospital, the compartmentation is limited, and then where the compartmentation is goes by fire doors and then fire enclosure and lift enclosure, and these are the lift enclosures and then passage enclosures. Everything is very, very compartmentalized, 250 meters square and so. And then normally these NBC says 1800 square meters. And then goes by this generally all buildings, buildings of this assembly, and then this mercantile building 2000 square meters, and other buildings normally this 750 meter square is the compartmentation, and then goes by the any sprinkler building it covers with a sprinkler, it goes by 1125. But how we can compartmentation can be achieved by means of fire barrier and making the fire resistant wall or with the fire resistant doors, it can be achieved as full. And then comparatively coming to the point of other services is the containment part. The containment goes by the already our Purandar sir has explained about the difference between the what is the smoke barrier and then fire barrier. It has been clearly defined. The fire barrier can be, we can obstruct or to containment with our fire doors and then fire suppression wall, fire stop, or otherwise any other solid things. Smoke barriers is a continuous membrane such as to be designed and constructed with all its opening from the top to the bottom of the building, either maybe the service duct or telephone or otherwise cable or electrical openings or AC, other different services has been passing through the buildings. Then these openings has to be concealed, and then the smoke has to not to penetrate into the, because smoke can penetrate into the smaller openings from the top to the bottom. And coming to the point of this prevention aspects of that, pressurization of these things, and then the smoke may not enter into the staircases and give the fire door and then two overrated fire doors and all that companies. And then coming to the point of the all these fire service happening in a basement or wherever the first floor gives a lot of this thing. Recently in our COVID center in Vijayawada also it has been happened in the first floor, and wherever the ground floor or where we can call it the ground floor or basements. Basement fires gives a lot of resulting deaths because of several reasons. Several reasons have been taken place because the fire will penetrate, the smoke will penetrate because of fire. Death rate is very, very less comparatively this thing. And then as far smoke enters into the various penetrations of its openings and all that, it may gives a result of death rate because of suffocation and all that anesthesia. This will gives a lot of deaths, and then coming to the point of the death rate is very high in the smoke affecting bodies. The service ducts, and then the openings and vertical maybe what openings, or then horizontal opening or floor, it may have, and all things have to be concealed. And then electric, especially in the building, everybody says about the what is the cause. Cause is the question now for the everybody's challenge of the firefighter today. When a building is there, only we will blame the cause of electric origin. Why we can make this electrical origin? There is no other factor. There are several factors, maybe several factors about not only electrical origin. There are several factors about things of that any inflammable materials dealing with the, suppose any hospital, there are volatile materials and gases. They are using oxygen and spreading over the fire and much more. And then these are some of the issues take place under fire load aspect of all combustible materials storing, and then basement aspect. There is a lot of waste materials dumping.
Okay.
Waste or dumping in the basements. These are the cause is giving a more of trouble and challenge to the fire service today. Just I will simply conclude about the containment aspects, about whatever the smoke barrier, resistant wall, and then fire rating things, and then firewalls. Coming to the firefighters issue and safety of the firefighter is the nowadays, earlier we call it as a fire resistance, as Purandar have said, then other expert has been said, our corridors has been expert, and then corridor 2 or 2.4 or something is very impossible to move out and evacuate the patient. Then it has been now developed in the new NBC. This is a firefighting soft. Firefighting soft is 2 hour rated with the staircase and 2 hour rated with the lift. We can easily evacuate from 2 floors or 3 floors, and then evacuation can be done through this fire soft to the evacuant, and then firefighters also very safely they can fight the fire or containment and then extinguish. This is the part of all things. This part is a passive system of firefighting, and active system. In active system, the sprinkler rating is playing a very vital role in extinguishing and containment of the fire asset. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Naik. Now, I can request the audience if there is any question, and they can put this question within we have another 5 minutes to go. I request Mr. Purandare to take a. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody, any question, please?
Okay, while the people are looking at the question, let me share with
That's very good.
you when we were trying to, work with
Yeah.
Nitin. Actually, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we were trying to work around with Nitin, we found that if we simply go by 1800 square meter and that kind of NBC, the compartmented size, the reality is that in a hospital, you will never have that many number of people to shift these patients. These patients have to be shifted with the help of a doctor under their own supervision, and at least a nursing person has to be available. Some staff has to be available. They cannot be allowed to walk away anywhere in any other place. So we found that in a typical nursing unit, we just have maybe 5, 10 nurses and a few doctors, 2, 3 doctors. So to shift 1800 square meter compartmentation size, something like 90 patients, you will never have 90 nurses. And then these 90 odd patients will have to be shifted to an adjoining space where I need to have another 90 space for that. So much of a superfluous additional space is never possible in any hospital. So therefore, what we found was that we used that further subdivision into the smaller areas where we gradually move as we move along, and we will soon start getting the support and all. We thought that then we found that this was the smaller compartmentation within the larger, the prescription of compartmentation was so very convenient for the doctors. Doctors were happy, nurses were happy. We were happy that it is possible to transfer. Let me share with you another example where there was a fire in the hospital in one area which was not really the hospital. Unfortunately, it became a huge fire, mainly because the security staff and the other people who were supposed to help the firemen or control the, provide the assistance in the initial stages, they were all put to the duty to shift the patients. As a result, this staff which we could have used for handling the initial stages of controlling, managing, moving the vehicles, moving the, the access into the rooms, etc. So we completely lost that situation. Whereas if these people had done their job and there was no need to move that many number of people, so that we also have to see whether that kind of a compartment we are able to handle. So therefore, this is, as I said, that this is one area which so encompassing in the in fire safety, which embraces practically every aspect of fire safety. And if a building is safe as far as this part is concerned, I'm very sure you have cracked the fire safety major hurdle. So that's just what I thought I'll share in the meanwhile. From fighter point of view, any question? We're not getting very specific. Why fire damper installation are not encouraged as a fire protection? In the chat box, brother, if you can see,
why fire damper installations are not encouraged as active fire protection system? That's what is Amit Ghosh's query. So, Mr. Ghosh, I think when we are talking of compartmentation, all penetrations in that compartmentation, including HVAC, ducts, everything, all those come into play. So it's not just about walls and doors, it's also about penetrations. And of course, fire dampers are part of that. So when we're talking of compartmentation, obviously fire dampers, fire and smoke dampers, or smoke dampers, depending on the type of compartmentation that you have, will definitely have to be there. Otherwise, you can't achieve compartmentation.
And there is another question of firefighters' point of view, difficulty in hospital fire in COVID times. I think if there is a problem in the hospital, they are also COVID warriors, yes. And they have to be. They are brave people. They will be called upon duty. But yes, it's a very unusual situation to fight a fire in the hospital during these times. But I don't think there is any specific way they can protect themselves. If you wear PPE over your own, the overalls, I think that will become more vulnerable because that may not be, fire retardant to that extent. So bad situation, nothing can be done. any lesson, major lesson learned from major fire recently? Mr. Premnath, the specific case I told you where in one part of the hospital, the staff was relocated and there was complete mayhem in the ward areas where people had to be shifted, the mothers had to be, the babies had to be shifted. It was basically because we did not have a definite containment strategy, definite, reliable, robust compartmentation. If it was there, the entire effort that we spent on was spent on moving the patient should have been actually on the fire control, and it was very easy to possible. It was very easy to protect at the end of the day. Even the structure got very severely damaged that it may hardly be possible to restore it.
Right. Okay. With this,
So,
with this,
you just have any
I will
questions you can.
request Dr. Saab.
Yeah, Mr.
I
Chillar,
think the time is over, and we were enjoying the talks. Pardon?
I
I
am
think,
Yogeshwar. Can I speak, Mr. Chillar? I am Yogeshwar speaking. Can I speak? I want to supplement the one of the speaker advice. Can I speak? Can I go
Voice
ahead?
is breaking. Your voice is not very clear. What do you want to? No, what is the problem?
Yeah, can I go? No, I don't have any problem. I would like to share my experience. Can I speak?
Sorry, sir. The time is
Okay.
over.
Okay, carry
Next
on.
time, you please give me. You please send your particulars. I'll take you. I will take you.
Okay.
Thank you. With this, I pay my regards to all the persons who have come here, and I pay my regards and say next after 15 days we'll again meet on a new subject. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you.